Let's discuss the electrical considerations for a commercial blender operating at 110 or 120 volts and rated at 18 amps. The primary question revolves around whether this blender should be treated as a continuous load under the National Electrical Code, or NEC, and how to properly protect it with a circuit breaker. We'll also consider whether to classify the blender as a motor, potentially impacting the sizing of the overcurrent protection. First, let's examine the relevant NEC sections. Section 422.11.g addresses continuous loads for receptacles rated 15 and 20 amps. Section 430 covers motors, motor circuits, and controllers. The key issue is determining if the blender's operational characteristics classify it as a continuous load under 422.11.g, and if the motor aspects of the blender dictate application of the motor-specific requirements in Article 430. A continuous load is defined as a load where the maximum current is expected to continue for 3 hours or more. While blenders aren't typically used continuously for such durations, the wording of 422.11.g imposes restrictions on receptacles supplying continuous loads. Specifically, it states that 15 or 20 amp receptacles supplied by either 120 volt or 240 volt branch circuit shall not supply continuous loads in excess of 80% of the branch circuit ampere rating. Although the blender inherently includes a motor, it's primarily classified as an appliance, not strictly a motor as defined within the scope of Article 430. Therefore, we will not apply the NEC 430, which is the section of the electrical code about motors. Regarding overcurrent protection, the manufacturer recommends a 20 amp circuit breaker, and this is also an appropriate choice. This recommendation should be followed as it indicates they understand the demands and characteristics of the blender, although it is not significantly higher than the blender rating. The blender pulls 18 amps, therefore it is rated slightly less than 20 amps. Since the blender is an appliance, the 2.5 times rule for motor overload protection from NEC 430 does not apply. The proper installation would include using a dedicated circuit, meaning the blender is on its own circuit breaker, to avoid overloading. The circuit should be equipped with an NEC 5-20R receptacle to accommodate the blender's plug. The circuit breaker should be sized appropriately, taking into account the load characteristics. A 20 amp circuit breaker is appropriate based on the 18 amp rating, the manufacturer's recommendation, and it protects the blender appropriately without the NEC 430's motor overcurrent calculations. In conclusion, the blender should be considered a continuous load under NEC 422.11.g. It should be installed on a dedicated 20 amp circuit, using an NEC 5-20R receptacle. This installation method provides the necessary overcurrent protection, avoids overloading, and complies with the NEC requirements for appliances on circuits supplying continuous loads. The manufacturer's recommendation of a 20 amp breaker is a good starting point.